Somewhere in your watch history is a video of a stranger being taken apart, and you are still watching it. The uncomfortable part is not what the man in the glasses said to her, it's what your face was doing while he said it. Between 2020 and 2022, 1.4 million people subscribed to watch that happen live from a room in Atlanta, Georgia. None of them were on the phone. All of them were being measured. He is not the subject of this video. You are. By the end of this, you'll know why your own worst opinion of yourself has a calm voice and a ring light, and it starts with a number the caller is asked to say out loud about her own face. Kevin Samuels was an image consultant in the black Mecca we call Atlanta, Georgia, home of the Atlanta Falcons and civil rights icon Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. He was born in Oklahoma City on March 13, 1969, and for years he sold advice about clothes. Suits, grooming, color matching, the unglamorous trade of making a man look expensive. He never held a psychology license, and the show never needed one. What he had was a camera, a phone line, and an opinion delivered without hesitation. In 2020, he started going live on YouTube and taking calls from strangers. Atlanta in 2020 was shut in like everywhere else, and everyone was home with a phone. The format never changed. A woman calls in. He asks her age, then her weight, then her income, then the question the whole show was built on. None of it was ambushed out of her. She was told the questions were coming. He asked her to rate her own appearance on a scale of 1 to 10. Whatever number she gives, he has a lower one ready. There is no studio, no producer, no panel. One man, one desk, one phone line. The caller could not see the audience. The audience could see everything. So, what number would you give yourself right now out of 10? You would recognize him instantly and not from his face. Heavy black frames, a shaved head, a microphone he leaned into like a witness stand. Image consulting is a real industry with no licensing board, no exam, and no complaints process. He was, by trade, extremely good at making people believe a verdict had been delivered. He almost never raised his voice. A calm man delivering a low number is far worse than a loud one. Nobody in 2020 invented this format. It was described in print in 1956. Two researchers, Donald Horton and Richard Wohl, published a paper in the journal Psychiatry. They had been watching hosts talk directly into a camera to millions of people, one person at a time. They named what the audience was doing: parasocial interaction, a one-sided relationship with someone who cannot see you. Horton and Wohl wrote something else that gets quoted far less often. They said the performer's real skill was making each viewer feel personally addressed while addressing nobody. That is not a criticism. That is a job description, and he was very good at it. That paper is nearly 70 years old, and it still describes a live stream better than anything written since. They were describing radio hosts and quiz shows. They were also describing this. 64 years before that ring light switched on in Atlanta, two men wrote the instruction manual. What they could not predict was what happens when the audience gets to watch someone else fail the test instead. Start with why anyone dials in at all. The callers were not tricked. They volunteered, and they knew exactly what the format did. They had watched him do it to somebody else, and they called anyway. That is not stupidity. That is a very old bargain. If a hard man tells you the truth and you survive it, the truth must have been worth something. People will pay a great deal to be told precisely what is wrong with them. The dangerous part is not the diagnosis, it's who gets to hold the chart. The show's engine was a scale, and the scale only ever ran in one direction. Say a caller gives herself a 7, he tells her evenly that she is average at best. Average at best became the phrase the internet kept. He would ask what she brought to the table. Then he would list what she didn't. Sometimes he hung up. The hang-up was the ending the clips wanted. Listen to any of those calls, and the giveaway is the pause after her answer. She has to sit inside a silence she did not choose on a live stream with her name attached. The silence does the work. He barely has to. The scale did not stay on faces. Age became a number. Weight became a number. Income became a number. Then the numbers were added together and called a market value, which is a phrase from selling used cars. Once you accept that a person has a price, every conversation becomes a negotiation. And in a negotiation, whoever names a number first has already conceded the frame. In 1954, Leon Festinger published a theory that explains the entire show in one sentence. People have no absolute measure of their own worth, so they measure against other people. Festinger called it social comparison, and he argued we do it constantly without ever deciding to. You do this too, and you did it today. You checked a photo of yourself before you sent it, and you compared it to something. You compared a salary at some point this month. You compared a body this week. There is no ruler in your head that reads in absolute units. There is only other people, and whoever is holding the microphone decides who counts as other people. In 1981, a psychologist named Thomas Wills added the part that pays the bills. Wills showed that when people feel bad about themselves, they seek out someone doing worse. He called it downward comparison, and he found it reliably lifts mood. So the woman on the phone was not the customer, she was the product, and the product had to keep getting cheaper because the audience adjusts. Wills was describing an appetite, not a character flaw. Everybody has it. What changes is whether somebody builds a business on top of it, which brings in the only party that never gets named in any of this. The recommendation system does not know what a person is. It knows what gets finished. A 12-minute conversation about the correct length of a jacket does not get finished. A number does. There's a study from 1973 that should be taught in every media class, and mostly isn't. Donald Naft-Tulin, John Ware, and Frank Donnelly hired a professional actor. They gave him a fake name, Dr. Myron Fox, and a lecture title stuffed with nonsense, mathematical game theory applied to physician education. The content was deliberately meaningless. He performed it for 3 groups of doctors, psychologists, and social workers. 55 of them filled out evaluations. The overwhelming majority rated him favorably. In 2014, E. Al Peer and Elisha Bodge replicated it and argued the original conclusion was overstated. So take it as a hint rather than a proof. The hint is still enough. Delivery gets scored as knowledge. Certainty reads as competence, even when there is nothing underneath it. He was rarely challenged on air because the format did not have a second chair. There was nobody in the room whose job was to say, "Prove that." Now the part the story usually skips. The live streams ran for hours, and most of it was boring. Color palettes, jacket lengths, beard maintenance, long stretches where nothing cruel happened at all. Hours of a man telling people to get their trousers hemmed. That is not what traveled. 30 seconds did. The clips that made him famous were cut by strangers, mostly on TikTok, in 2020 and 2021. Nobody has published exact numbers on that, and many of the accounts that did the clipping are gone. But the shape of it is not in dispute. The 30 seconds that spread were chosen by an audience, not by him. 1 million people did not decide to watch a man give advice. They decided which 30 seconds of him would exist. By 2021, the format had copies. Other men, other desks, the same scale. Some were harsher because harsher is what the clipping had selected for. Those men were not the cause of anything. They were the response. The desk was never the invention. The scale was the invention. If the audience selected for cruelty, what exactly was the audience buying? Rank. The audience was buying rank, not entertainment, not advice, a position relative to somebody else delivered by a man with authority. Rank is not a topic, it's a lens, and once it's fitted, everything is legible through it. Faces, salaries, wedding photos, the friend who just bought a house. In 1976, Robert Cialdini ran a study across 7 universities that sounds trivial and isn't. His team counted how many students wore school clothing to class on Monday mornings. After a football win, the sweatshirts came out. After a loss, they stayed in the drawer. Cialdini called it basking in reflected glory. Students said we won about a game they watched from a couch. That is the mechanism. Watching a man rank a stranger lets you stand next to the ranker. For 20 minutes, you are not the one being measured. You are on the other side of the desk. It is the most comfortable seat in the building, and it costs nothing to sit in. But standing next to the ranker costs something, and the bill arrives later. Because the scale does not switch off when the stream ends. You learned the categories: age, weight, income, face. You learned the tone. Calm, patient, absolutely certain. And you learned where you would land because you ran the numbers on yourself while she answered. Nobody asked you to. You did it for free, in real time, every single episode. You can test this on yourself in about 4 seconds. Think of somebody you follow who is doing better than you. Now notice that you have already worked out what they have that you don't. You did that without instructions. The show only supplied the vocabulary. Abraham Tesser spent the 1980s testing what people do when someone close to them outperforms them. His answer, published in 1988, was that people quietly move away from the comparison. They change hobbies. They downgrade the friendship. They decide the thing never mattered. Or they close the gap a different way, by watching somebody else get measured instead. Tesser called it self-evaluation maintenance, and it explains the half of the audience nobody talks about. Some were there to feel above the caller. Some were there to learn the rules before they got tested. By most accounts, the audience skewed heavily male, and those men were not watching to laugh. Nobody has clean demographic data on that, so hold it loosely. But a show that ranks people finds its most loyal audience among people who feel unranked. In 2004, Paul Price and Eric Stone tested how people choose who to take advice from. Their subjects reliably preferred the confident advisor over the accurate one. Price and Stone called it the confidence heuristic. Certainty gets treated as evidence. The show never had to be right. It only had to be certain, on camera, without blinking. They were there to be told they had a value in a year when a lot of them felt they had none. Mina C. Cara and Susan Fisk spent years studying what the face does when an envied person fails. They used electrodes on the muscles that pull a smile while people read about other people's misfortunes. The smiles showed up, small ones, fast ones, aimed at high-status targets. The subjects reported feeling nothing much. Their faces disagreed, not because they were cruel, because a rival falling is information about your own position. This is the appetite the format was feeding, and it did not have to be taught. By 2022, the format had become an economy. Clip channels, reaction channels, channels reacting to the reaction channels. None of it needed him. It needed the footage, and the footage was effectively infinite. A persona, once it is running, does not require the person very much at all. There was a version of this that stayed a styling channel, and for a while that was the only version. What changed was not the man. What changed was which 30 seconds the machine kept. In April 2022, he described unmarried women over 35 as leftovers. One word. It traveled further than any rating he ever gave. The backlash was immediate, and it was enormous. The Root argued that lines like that hand the shame of being single to women alone. This was the moment a market corrects. It didn't. He kept the platform, the audience, and the format, right through to May. That is the moment worth staring at, because it is the only real fork in this story. Outrage and endorsement are the same input. The system cannot tell them apart. Everyone who shared the clip to condemn it paid exactly the same toll as everyone who shared it to agree. On the evening of May 5, 2022, Kevin Samuels complained of chest pain and collapsed at his apartment in Atlanta. A woman who was with him called emergency services and tried to revive him. He could not be resuscitated. He was 53 years old. The rumor reached the internet before it reached his family. His mother, Beverly Samuels Birch, told NBC News that she learned of her son's death from social media. She said she had not even been notified. On July 14, 2022, Chief Medical Examiner Karen Sullivan filed her finding: hypertension, high blood pressure. The manner of death was ruled natural. Half the internet reported his age as 57. The Fulton County record says 53. The wrong number is the one that spread, and almost nobody went back to correct it. Content kept appearing on the channel afterwards, re-uploads mostly, of things he had already said. A year later, those were still averaging around 400,000 views each. A man whose whole format was accuracy about other people's numbers is remembered under a wrong one. If the show ended in 2022, why does the scale still feel installed? 2 years of footage, one question sitting underneath all of it. What is a person worth, stated numerically, out loud, in front of strangers? Say it plainly like that, and it sounds monstrous. It's an obscene question. It is also the question a hiring panel answers every week, in a room with a spreadsheet open, and a dating app, and a performance review, and a mortgage application. The show was not deviant. It was just loud about arithmetic everyone else performs quietly. The offense was never the maths. The offense was the volume, which is why the discomfort is not moral. It's recognition. Watching it feels bad the way catching your own posture in a shop window feels bad. Nothing new happened. Something habitual just became visible for a second. So here is what the show was actually selling, and it was never advice. It sold a seat on the correct side of a scale. That is a real product. That is worth 20 minutes of anybody's evening. A seat is cheap. A scale is permanent. The callers paid for theirs in one afternoon and then went home. The audience is still paying, quietly, in a currency nobody itemizes. The women who called took the worst of it publicly, and mostly under their own faces. They carried the cost of a lesson the audience received for free. Every episode had 2 people being evaluated, and only one of them knew it. Her number ended when the call ended. Yours didn't, because nobody hung up on you. Nobody ever tells you the segment is over. He never once rated the woman on the phone. He rated the person watching, and the person watching agreed. That's why the clips still work in 2026, years after the man who made them died. You don't need to know who he was. You already know the format. You were running it on yourself long before you ever found the channel. The channel just gave the process a voice, a desk, and a pair of glasses. He was not a villain, and he was not a prophet. He was a calm man who found the oldest lever in social psychology and pulled it live, on camera, nightly. The genius of the format was that it looked like it had a subject. One woman, one problem, one verdict, one hang-up. It never had a subject. It had a mirror with a delay on it. The lever is older than the channel, older than the platform, older than television. So open the app you were in before this video. It's doing the same job with better manners. In September 2021, the Wall Street Journal published internal meta-research leaked by Francis H.W. Ginn. A March 2020 slide said 32% of teen girls who already felt bad about their bodies said Instagram made it worse. Another figure in those decks, 66% of teen girls reported negative social comparison on the platform. Meta disputed the framing and published the decks with its own annotations, so read them and decide for yourself. But notice the words their own researchers reached for. Social comparison, Festinger's phrase in a company slide deck 66 years later. You are not scrolling, you are polling. Every profile is a data point. Every data point moves a line you cannot see. Every face you swipe past updates a number you would swear you don't keep. He asked one woman for her number at a time. Your feed asks you for yours about once a second and never says the word out loud. Picture the audience for one of those streams. Thousands of people watching one woman answer one question. Put a number over her head, the way the chat did. Now pull back and put a number over every single person watching. Nobody typed those. Nobody had to. That is the room. That was always the room. I'm not going to tell you the number is meaningless because you wouldn't believe me. Numbers you can retrieve that fast are load-bearing. Something is standing on that number. Probably several things, but you can find out who built it. That is a genuinely answerable question, and almost nobody asks it. Earlier, I asked what number you would give yourself out of 10. You answered, fast, without checking anything. That speed is the entire video. You didn't calculate it, you retrieved it. Retrieval means it was stored. Storage means somebody put it there. So tell me in the comments where yours came from. Not the number, the source, a parent, a coach, a group chat, a show you watched for 20 minutes and forgot about. Whoever it was, they are not in the room anymore. The number stayed. You still know your number. Nobody had to tell you.